Everyone, this is Nikachu. Happy New Year! And Wizards of the Coast has started the new year with a bang. No better fireworks than what they've released to the Merfolk community. Kumena himself, Kumena, the Tyrant of Orazca. So, what is this? This could push so many builds of Tropical Merfolk over the top. It's a 1 green, 1 blue, 1 colorless creature, legendary Merfolk Shaman. Tap another untapped Merfolk you control. Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca can't be blocked this turn. Second mode, tap 3 untapped Merfolk you control, draw a card. And lastly, tap 5 untapped Merfolk you control, put a +1/+1 counter on each Merfolk you control. Oh, by the way, this is a 2/4 creature. There are so many abilities, so many modes on this card that there's no room for flavor text. So, do I think this is great? I think this card is amazing. Let's start off with Standard. This Standard badly needs this card. There is just no damn way that we can beat like energy decks by just for Whirler Virtuoso by itself. I'm telling you, I played the Spirits deck, and it's impossible to get these 1 toughness creatures through Whirler Virtuoso's Thopter tokens. And there are plenty of 1 toughness creatures that are in this Merfolk deck. Whether it's Metallic Mimic, the soon-to-be Silvergill Adept, Merfolk Branchwalker, or even Shaper's Apprentice. Many 1 toughness creatures can't get through those Thopters. Until now, Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca, will either get unblockable, attack through all that stuff for some nice clean damage, or can buff up the entire team turn after turn after turn, pumping them all up. Not like any of those sort of silly lords where, you know, you kill the lord and the whole team dies. This is permanent. You put a +1/+1 counter on everything. Not to mention, you can even try to grind out those games with tapping 3 Merfolk and drawing cards. So it's going to be a huge boon to Standard Merfolk. Undoubtedly is going to give it some life and give it some playability. But enough of that, let's move on to its modern playability, because I think this is incredibly playable in modern. Let us start with the casting cost. This casting cost is so fair. It's for so many modes and abilities on a creature. I'm surprised that they didn't make it 4 or 5. 3 is incredibly within our range to cast something like this. And it's not even like it requires double blue or double green. The fact that it's a 3-mana creature makes it actually easier for us to cast it in Tropical Merfolk. Because we do not need that green mana so quickly. Not like we need it when we actually play Kumena Speaker or Merfolk Branchwalker. We need that green mana on turn 1 or 2, or we need an Ether Vial. This makes it a lot more relaxed on our mana curve. So I think the mana is incredibly fair. I think it was costed very aggressively, and there's nothing to complain about this card whatsoever. Let's move on to the power and toughness, which is actually, I think, one of the best parts of this card. We have never had a Merfolk creature that was at 4 toughness. 4 toughness. What does that mean? Well, first off, it's out of range of Lightning Bolt. It's out of range of Collective Brutality. But most importantly, it's out of range of Anger of the Gods. So if you curve into something like Silvergill Adept, Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca, and they play Anger of the Gods, they're only killing off 1 Silvergill Adept. And what happens if they don't play Anger of the Gods immediately? Then you're going to have extra creatures out that can end up drawing you cards. So, I think that is the best part of this creature, is that it is so big. It makes an incredibly good blocker. You can block anything for days against Burn, for example. You can easily block Thalia. You can block so many more creatures. The fact that the 4 toughness is incredibly relevant, but I like it the most that it can get out of range of sweepers like Anger of the Gods, also Flaying Tendrils, which is incredibly relevant. It might wipe out the other creatures on the board, but the fact that this thing sticks is very relevant. It can still attack immediately on the next turn, and it can also help rebuild your board because of its drawing card mode. So I think that is one of my favorite parts of this creature, that for 3 mana we can stabilize pretty well. I mean, think of all the 3-powered creatures in the format that are so difficult to block. Things like Eldrazi Displacer, what's it called? Matter Reshaper, sometimes a 3/3 Ooze or Goyf or Night of the Reliquary, something along those lines. There's all sorts of 3-powered creatures that we can never block with lords unless we have like 3 lords in place so that they're all 4/4 creatures, which is difficult to do. It's hard to draw that many lords and also have them stick. This thing, if it's on the board and it stays, then it's going to be blocking quite reliably. So great on defense, resistant, very resistant to removal spells. I love it. So let's move on to its first mode, which is tap another untapped Merfolk you control. Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca, can't be blocked this turn. Beautiful. So easy to play around removal spells when you know the thing is just unblockable. So basically, like for crew 1, you tap a Merfolk and you get in for damage. You have the removal spell or you don't. It's as simple as that. No playing around like Snapcaster Bolt. No, because usually we have to be very careful about our unblockable, our Island Walk Lords. We have to be very, very careful with them. If we make a preemptive attack when we only have 1 Island Walk Lord out, someone could just Lightning Bolt the Island Walk Lord and then block our creature. But if we just have an unblockable creature, then we can freely attack knowing that there's no way of going wrong. So decisions become easier, and I think it's going to be very relevant in a lot of matchups where there can be board stalls or a lot of blockers in the way. For example, this happens very often against Eldrazi or Death and Taxes. A lot of decks with Ghost Quarter where Spreading Seas isn't always reliable. Like, they just have a lot of modes of destroying it and get their blockers in the way. So this is going to be great in those matchups, getting through damage very comfortably, very easily, very reliably, without making the board state too complicated. So let's move on to the next mode. Tap 3 untapped Merfolk you control and draw a card. We have a lot of tools to beat the attrition-based decks already, but this can't hurt at all. And I'll tell you what, I love this ability. This is the reason why I think this card is so valuable and is going to compete very well with the other 3 drops that we have in the deck already. Silvergill Adept is one of the best cards in the deck because when it enters the battlefield, it gets value. It draws a card. It replaces itself. No matter if you kill it or shoot it, like whatever you want, if it leaves the battlefield, you got value and it had an impact on the game. Same thing with stuff like Harbinger of the Tides. Enters the battlefield, bounces your creature back to your hand. You know, if you kill the Harbinger, it doesn't matter. The damage has been done. The tempo has been gained. However, I really hated cards like Merfolk. You tap out for this Lord. Yes, it makes the entire board bigger. It makes all your creatures buffed up. But if they kill the Merfolk on the exact same turn, it's like nothing happened. You didn't get any value. You just basically paid 3 mana for a creature. They killed it, maybe for 1 mana with Lightning Bolt or Fatal Push, whatever, but you didn't get anything out of it. That's not going to be the case with Kumena, the Tyrant, because if you play this thing, you'll have the ability to draw a card before it dies, therefore getting value out of this thing. You might even get a lot of value if you vial it in at end of turn, draw a card, untap, and then, you know, perhaps even draw more cards. So the point is, it has this pseudo enter the battlefield effect. And what I really love about this is it turns garbage creatures on the board into something valuable. There's a lot of matchups where Curse Catcher just doesn't really do very much, there aren't any instants or sorceries to counter, or late in the game, Harbinger of the Tides, it did its job, but then it becomes a Grizzly Bear. All of a sudden, those all become the pieces to a machine to draw cards. Those vanilla creatures turn into a drawing engine. You hear me? A drawing engine that is going to accrue value turn after turn after turn. And I believe that that is a huge bonus to our deck. Not to mention, we could use the cards. We are an Ether Vial deck, and raw card advantage is very important to an Ether Vial deck, so that we can play creatures with our mana and also through our Ether Vial. Cards like Ancestral Visions never fit in the Merfolk deck because it's not a creature. It wasn't a creature that was able to draw us cards, unlike Silvergill Adept. And now we have Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca, who will contribute to this raw card advantage created by the creatures themselves, accumulating value and putting a lot of pressure on our opponent when we have an Ether Vial in play. So I think this has great synergy with Ether Vial. Drawing the cards are incredibly relevant. Like, how is it not relevant against, like, anything? Only against maybe the super fast decks, like, you know, Counters Company, it's not going to be relevant. I think I'll side it out against Storm. But against everything else, you're going to want the extra cards. It also encourages me against perhaps Supreme Verdict decks to play a third creature, because, like, what are you going to lose? You play the third creature, you draw a card, and then even if they Supreme Verdict you, it was just a, at best, 3 for 2. But if you can get any more than one card off of this ability, then I mean it's just gravy. You're pulling ahead. So I think it's great, and I think it's great in that regard as well. And lastly, let's talk about the tap 5 untap Merfolk you control. Put a +1/+1 counter on each Merfolk you control. So there's a lot of people that might say, do you know what, if you've got 5 Merfolk in play, it's like a win more situation. That's sort of true, but there are a lot of matchups where this is going to be incredibly relevant. I think those matchups are going to include matchups like Eldrazi-tron, where there's going to be a board stall. They got big creatures like Thought-Knot Seer, Reality Smasher, well, not only Eldrazi-tron, especially Death and Taxes, where it's very hard to keep Island Walk on the Lord. And they have a bunch of first strike creatures in the form of Thalia and Blade Splicer Golem tokens. It's very difficult to attack into all of that. Sometimes they create a huge wide board, and we have no Spreading Seas, or they've got Ghost Quarter on the board. They're always threatening to blow up the Spreading Seas. And the same thing against Eldrazi and Taxes, or even, yeah, in Eldrazi and Taxes, Bant Eldrazi, where they don't play an island. There's a lot of games where we just have a ton of creatures on the board and we have no way of getting through. So we can get through in 2 ways. One, we can slowly chip away with Kumena's unblockability ability, or we can slowly make our creatures bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger every single turn, until there's a point where we just start smashing in for insane amounts of damage. So situations like that also happen. Not every single deck in Modern is incredibly attrition based, so I think this card has a lot of application across the board. What are the faults? I would say, like, first off, you have to tap creatures to activate any of the abilities. So if you're tapping these things, you're not being aggressive, or if you're tapping them preemptively to give this thing unblockability, then you lose the ability of being defensive. It's sort of a problem with Smuggler's Copter. If you're tapping things to attack with Copter, then you're like completely at the whim of any sort of attack from your opponent, and it's harder to block things from your opponent because you're always tapping something to block with Smuggler's Copter. You can't be so aggressive with this card if you want to get value out of the abilities, but these are incredibly powerful abilities. The card is full of text. Very interested in how this thing is going to play out. Very aggressively costed. Fantastic belated Christmas gift from Wizards of the Coast. I think Kumena is going to be a great card going forward in Standard, in Modern, and who knows what they're going to do with this thing in Commander. It's going to be amazing. So we're definitely going to be playtesting this card in the future. I hope everyone else is excited about it. I'm excited about it. The Simic followers are excited about it. So anyway, this has been Nikachu talking about Kumena, the Tyrant of Orazca.